Hi everyone, welcome to In the Dark with me, Jason McIntyre. First I wanted to announce the latest book in the Dovetail Cove series. My hope is to have this book out before Christmas 2016, so that's in the next couple of weeks. It's looking good for that. The book is called Deathbed. It fits in with the rhyming scheme of the series to date. And I use that term series very loosely, as some of you are sick of me saying, and some of you haven't even heard me say yet. Dovetail Cove is not a traditional series. It doesn't follow one book after the other. At least it hasn't so far. But my intent now is to clarify things by releasing everything in chronological order. So far we've seen Shed. That takes place in Dovetail Cove on this island in 1977. That was the first book that came out. The second book that came out was Bled, and it takes place in 1972. The third one was Dread, and it takes place in 78, and it ties both of those books together. The thing is with Dovetail Cove, I say it's not a series because you can read these in any order. They have their own main characters. They each have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I know some of you are darn sick of hearing me say this. And I get that. But some of you, and I've heard it from friends on Facebook, friends on Twitter, Zoofster on Twitter, for example, says, I'm interested in reading these, but I'm going to wait until they all come out, and I can't remember his term. I'm going to shotgun them, or I'm going to binge read them. I can't remember what his term was. And I think there's a lot of readers that are kind of, they've either read one, and they're waiting for the rest, or they haven't read any, and they're kind of waiting to get on board to follow them in this chronological order. I swear I haven't been drinking anything stronger than mango and melon. But it's still hard to say chronological when you're sitting in the dark. So, Deathbed, 1971. On the island this world that I've created in the town of Dovetail Cove. It centers on Farah, who at the time is 12 and a half years old, and she's very, very careful to let you know 12 and a half, not 12, 12 and a half, coming 13. And I won't reveal tons of surprises, but suffice it to say, there's something not quite right in Dovetail Cove, and we're getting a sense of it this early. The book opens with Farah attending a street fair, and she finds a mystery box that she wants to purchase from one of the vendors at the street fair. And this unlocks the beginning of things for Farah, for Police Chief Burkhead, and for all the other characters that have populated Dovetail Cove so far. So those of you that want to shotgun these, or read them in chronological order, can do so. They've all been written in different genres because, quite frankly, Dovetail Cove has been a bit of a playground for me. I've written some shorter books and some longer books in this series. It's not a series. But I did so as my kids were growing up and getting older, and I had less time to sit down and write 200,000 word books. So some of these books are 30,000, 40,000, 75,000 words. It's because that's the length that they needed to be. It's not because I sat down and said, I'm going to write this thing at 20,000 words, and that's just how it's going to go. I wrote them for the length that they felt like they needed to be. But the series, or the way that I set it up, allowed me to do that, so that I could spend 2 weeks writing one and then put it aside and deal with life and day job and work and family and all those other things, and then come back to Dovetail Cove. So that's one reason it's done this way, and I think it's kind of worked out. I'm just finishing up the 10th book, which is 1980. I'm not sharing any of the titles yet. It's a kind of a fun thing that I do, is I kind of just surprise people with the titles, and that's tonight's surprise, I guess. Deathbed, 1971. The primary genre there is actually a fairy tale story. Now, they're all written together, and they're all me writing it, so it's all my style. But they each kind of draw in this playgroundy way where I was able to try out different things. So with Farah's story in Deathbed, It's primarily a fairy tale, if you can believe it. Bled, 1972. It's primarily a psychological thriller, and it pulls some characters forward from deathbed, even though they were written backwards in chronological order. There I go again. I need another drink of my mango. 1973 is a book whose title will not be revealed yet, but it'll be released next. So Deathbed this Christmas, Bled is already out, book 2, and 1973, book 3, will follow as soon as I can get it out after that. 1974 is a romance, if you can believe this guy wrote a romance. If you ask my wife, she would say, yeah, he's a romantic guy. Of course he could write a romance. But everybody else that has read my work would say, you can't write a romance. You're not good at that. So I'll let you be the judge when that one comes out, hopefully early in 2017. Zed was released last year, and a second edition just came out last month. That's 1975. It's a coming-of-age drama. There are elements of horror and suspense and intrigue and paranormal even in Zed. There was actually quite a good review that said this one was billed as a horror or a suspense. Actually, it said specifically horror, but it's not. And so that reviewer dinged me in the review for that. And my feeling is, well, no, it never really was billed as a horror. All of these books in Dovetail Cove are kind of different home genres. They all draw from horror and suspense and thrillerdom, but they are all different. 1976 is just such a fun, longer book. It's actually a soap opera. Again, something I've not done before, and I had fun trying it out. And the reason I did these different genres is not because I just wanted to play around, but also because the stories themselves, I feel called for these explorations in these genres. 77 is Shed, which has been out for a while, and it's probably the closest thing to a downright horror book. A lot of folks read it and compared it with some of the Stephen King works favorably, and that's wonderful. I'm blessed to hear that. I don't compare it that way, but others have. Dread, 1978, has that lovely cover with the wave crashing up over the lighthouse. People often come back and mention how effective that cover was. I'm quite proud of it. That one's a mystery, and I sometimes call it a murder mystery in reverse. And once you read it, you'll understand what that means. 1979 is a fantasy, kind of like an Alice in Wonderland type genre story. And the final book, which takes place in 1980, again, I'm not sharing the title yet, it draws characters from all of these books. And it's again, a standalone book. But if you read all the others, obviously that would inform more as you read book 10. And it takes place in 1980, and it is drawing from all these different genres, but it's primarily a suspense thriller with horror, heavy horror elements at that point. So tonight I thought I would share that with you, hopefully clarify that for you. If I've not mentioned it in a while, if you have questions, you're curious, or you don't get it, or you're wondering which book comes when, please visit the website, www.thefarthestreaches.com. And I also thought I would share a reading with you that I did recently that I had a ton of fun doing. So this is from Zed, which was re-released in a second edition last month. Zed is primarily about Tom Mason. He's from the mainland. He's come over to the island in 1975. It's August at this point. He's done a summer job at the group care home called Ocean View Manor, and they have 6 house guests. They call them house guests, but they are mentally challenged adults who have different intellects, different levels of IQ, different levels of independence. And Nurse Karen, so proclaimed Nurse Karen, though she's not a registered nurse, she's one of the power couple. She's half the power couple on the island, the Bannatynes, Karen and Chris Bannatyne. And this is her pet project, is looking after the residents, or she calls them house guests. of Ocean View Manor, and she's hired Tom to be kind of looking after them over the summer. Cheap slave labor. He's a 19-year-old kid, and he's just looking to make some money so that he has spending dough for his college courses in the fall, and he also really wants to buy a new camera. He's a budding photographer. And the second main character in that book is a character called Zeke that some of you will remember from a book called Dread and from other upcoming books in this Dovetail Cove world, and he's quickly becoming a favorite. He's definitely a favorite of mine. He's awesome to write, but he's a guest or a patient at Ocean View Manor, and something's happened to him in Zed in 1975 in August. Tom has taken him and the other house guests to a hot pool, a hot spring, where the warm mineral waters are soothing and calming for guys like Zeke and others. And something in those waters has changed Zeke. And he's starting to remember things that he has not remembered. And Tom has asked him a few questions that are helping him remember. And Tom is specifically asking about Nurse Karen's husband, Chris. So that's where this reading comes from. So I will do my best to give you a reading from Zeke's point of view after Tom has begun questioning him. I seen her, Tom. I remember it as plain as day, even though it was the middle of the night. She made me take my truck. I just washed my truck, and I had to take it to Nurse Karen and Mr. Chris's house. They live in a big house on the avenue. Bigger than Ocean View, you know. They's only about 2 minutes drive from here. She had the neatest old bed, and she asked me to move the old bed. I needed to take the old bed from Nurse Karen and Mr. Chris's basement up the stairs and put it in the back of my truck. I was awful careful, Tom. I did not want to scratch my truck. I love my truck. I did what she wanted, but she yelled. It was hard to do. It was dark out. Nighttime makes it dark out, and Nurse Karen said we had to be more quiet. I couldn't be more quiet. It was heavy, and I lifted it all myself. I had to get the bed into the truck without using lights, neither. It was weird, Tom. She gave me 3 of those submarine vitamins. She said I needed all my muscles, and the vitamins would give me muscles, just like Popeye the Sailor Man. Only that wasn't quite right, because Popeye the Sailor Man, he gets super big muscles when he eats a can of that yucky spinach. I tried eating that awful spinach one time when I was a boy, and I made a pukey mess. I didn't get no big super muscles, and I didn't get them that night with Nurse Karen either. Not after I had them extra vitamins. I just got sleepy. But I did what Nurse Karen asked me to do. I didn't fuss, and I didn't backtalk, even though she was yelling and worried. My daddy always said I had a problem with backtalk, but I've learned that if I'm not sure if I have backtalk coming, I should just keep quiet and not say anything to anyone. I drove the bed in the back of my truck up north of town to those new places. You know them new places? They's new bungalows north of the bridge. They was going to build 100 new places, all the same, for all the workers at the mine. Oh, about 15 years back, I think. But the workers never came. And the mine went into, what do they call it? A shutdown. So Karen and Mr. Chris, I think they must own one of those houses. Because we went right up to one. Just like the house on the avenue, this one was all dark. No lights on. And it was hard to find the lane and not hit the trees and the big rocks. We had flashers. You know, torches with batteries in them. I hurt my back getting the big old bed into the house. And I did scratch my truck. It made me mad. And she yelled at me more. We put the bed into the big empty room at the back. All the rooms were empty, except in the living room. There were some of them big steel filing cabinets, but there wasn't even a table or chairs in the kitchen. No couch, and no TV anywheres neither. We got back in my truck and we drove in the dark again. All the way back home. Her home, I mean. On the avenue. And she told me to wait. I waited for an awful long time. I was getting sleepy. I think it was those submarine vitamins. But I kept myself awake. Nurse Karen told me to wait. And I did. When she came out, she was all wet and stinky. I think she was sweaty. I think she was real worried about something. She told me to hurry and come with her back inside. I gave myself some slaps. Right in the face, Tom. Real hard, I mean real hard. I wasn't sure if I was awake or sleeping, but I was pretty sure I was awake. I saw a big lion in the trees. He was talking to me and telling me to go to sleep. Right there on the grass. But I didn't. I promised Nurse Karen I'd help, and I would. I always keep my promises. Daddy taught me that's what a man does. Right, Tom? So I said goodbye to the lion in the trees. And I said see you later to the lion in the trees. And I went with Nurse Karen back into her big house on the avenue. We went back down the stairs. Long, deep, dark ones that open out into the yard, Tom. Not like here at Ocean View, where them stairs they come up to the kitchen and the screen door. These stairs, they come out a big box in the ground. Nurse Karen, she kept saying, shh, and quiet down. And she called me a big, what's the word, galoot? A big galoot, yeah. That's what she called me. I remember really good now, Tom. I will tell you all about my remembering soon. My words are getting better, and I can put them together better, but I still talk like I did before. I can put things in order, and remember things to come back to later. I'll remember this right now, and tell you about it when I finish the part about what I saw down those deep, dark steps. On the cold dirt floor was a big rolled-up blanket, and one little bulb shone down there. Nurse Karen hurried over to the big rolled-up blanket. It was pink on the inside, and so fluffy and downy, but it was dirty. On the outside it showed wheatgrass and a little white flower pattern that repeated and repeated. I remember it so good now, even though I couldn't before the spring water made me better. She said, hurry, pick it up. Be a good boy now and take this to the truck, Zeke. Be quick about it and don't you fall. And she knelt down in the dirt with a jangle of keys. She used one of them keys to unlock a length of thick silver chain. It sparkled, kinda like, in the one dim bulb, and looked nice. It went to the big wood beams, that chain, and looped up there, like Nurse Karen didn't want no one to steal her old blanket. Nurse Karen, she grunted to get up and down to her knees. 3 more times. She undid 3 more locks. 4 locks all told, Tom. My counting is so good now. Last night I counted to 1,000,000. I didn't know I could count so high or think about numbers for so long. She wiped her hands on her white uniform and made the white go dirty and brown. She used her hem and pulled it up to wipe her forehead. We had an awful hot summer, huh, Tom? So I picked up the blanket and oomph, I nearly dropped it. I nearly did what Nurse Karen told me for sure not to do. But it was heavier than I thought it could be. And I doubled under it and got myself back upright. And I headed for those stairs. Even if Nurse Karen yelled at me 100 more times, no, 1,000,000, I would not let her down. A man is as good as his promises, my daddy said. My knees almost buckled on the little dark stairs, but the lion was up at the top and he said I could do it. And that when I did what Nurse Karen wanted, I could have a super big sleep. The lion in the trees, he told me I'd never have to remember the dark night with the neato bed. He told me I'd never have to remember the lion in the trees neither, not if I didn't want to. So I got myself and the big dirty blanket to the stairs. My heart hurt me, Tom. It was pounding harder than it ever pounded. Well, except maybe that one time with Daddy and the axe. But I'll tell you about that too, don't worry. I don't forget to tell things like I used to, not anymore. I didn't stop, and I didn't take any breather breaks. I got my second wind, they say. I got that big dirty blanket with the pink backing and heaved it right there into the truck. But a man's hand flopped out. His hand and his cuff, and all the way to an elbow. I think it was Mr. Chris's hand because I remember his wedding ring. Him and Nurse Karen, they haven't been married forever, but they've been married a lot of years. And Mr. Chris, he always wore that wedding ring she gave him on their wedding day. He also wore that brute aftershave, and I could smell a whiff of that too. Same as when he comes to visit us all at Ocean View. I looked at Nurse Karen. She followed behind me to the truck, and I must have looked like a ghost got me because she said, "Don't worry, it's Mr. Chris. He's sleeping. I gave him the nighttime vitamins too. They don't make you strong when it's time to sleep, Zeke. You're going to sleep soon, but Mr. Chris, he's going to sleep now. He's been super sick, Zeke," she said. "And I'm going to let him rest at that little house north of the creek. He's going to get better, but he's catchy now. And I don't want anyone else in town to get his sick. See?" I didn't see. Not then. I do now, Tom, but I didn't on the night of the lion in the trees and the long, deep stairs down to the dirt. That is the end of that reading from Zed, 1975, Dovetail Cove. It is available now everywhere that ebooks are available, and you can get in touch with me if you would like a signed paperback copy. Deathbed, Dovetail Cove 1971 will be coming out shortly in the next couple of weeks. I'm hoping to price it aggressively for a Christmas gift for you guys for being patient, also as a mea culpa for being so tardy and getting new books out in the last while, and also to get folks interested. Hopefully it's cheap enough that somebody will want to pick it up, because it is the chronological start, I got it that time, of the series, and hopefully people will enjoy reading about Farah and her adventure and her scary time, and be interested enough to come back for Bled in 1972 and 73 and 74 and all the rest as I release them. Thank you so much for listening to my reading and watching this video. It has gone on a bit, so thank you if you've made it this far. Catch me on the Twitter, Jason C. McIntyre, Facebook, Jason McIntyre. Again, thank you for listening. Stay safe.